So our first match is with Bakher and Nave against Alan Dang. So looking at Bakher and Nave's deck, it's apparently not a zoo deck since we do see the Beckner of Evil. I was anticipating a zoo deck, but apparently it's not. So it's probably like a mid-range kind of Cthulhu deck. So Alan Dang is obviously playing a Temple Warrior kind of deck, really popular nowadays, especially when there's a lot of aggressive decks and you really want to counter them. So Temple War is definitely really good for that. So Bakher and Nave having a 2-drop, definitely playing the Beckner of Evil, and it allows the War Axe charge to be used on the Beckner of Evil potentially, because he does want his other creatures to be protected. He does want his Brand Bronzebeard, if he decides to play on turn 3, to be protected. So definitely nothing for Alan Dang to play there because he doesn't have a turn 2 kind of play, which is sort of bad for him. Twilight Elder picking it up on curve, so he doesn't really need to play a Brand Bronzebeard, and definitely Twilight Elder in terms of stats is a lot better, and it allows him to feel for Cthulhu as well, so he can potentially burst down to Temple Warrior in the late game. So since these two are two mid-range kind of decks, you can assume that they really need to heavily rely on tempo. So picking up the Imp Gang boss, that is definitely not bad, but Bakher and Nave decides to play the Brand Bronzebeard. The reason for that is not because for the Abusive Sergeant that can officially trade with the Frenzy Monkey, it's because you can set up for Argus the following turn. The reason why Bakher and Nave has the Abusive Sergeant in between the Twilight Elder and the Brand is because he wants to Argus the Abusive and the Brand's Bronzebeard in order to protect his Twilight Elder, as long as Alan Dang doesn't remove it this turn. We can see Alan Dang removing the Twilight Elder with an Execute, but definitely it's not worth it since the Bloodhoof Brave can contest 3 of the creatures seen on board, but unfortunately Bakher and Nave is going to play the Argus, which will be efficiently trading against the Bloodhoof Brave. So definitely a lot of efficient trades here and looking really bad for Alan Dang, and while also having his Twilight Elder protected. No, but he decides to trade it in. This is a really heads up play, since if the Brand Bronzebeard gets damaged, it can potentially be executed, which will lose a lot of value for Bakher and Nave, and the 1 charge on the Twilight Elder is not that big of a deal, and Alan Dang picks up a Whirlwind, which gives him an activator for the Execute. So this is really good and puts back Alan Dang in a really good spot while also being able to play the Frenzy Monkey. So you have a lot of tempo right now. So being able to tap, Bakher and Nave can efficiently use his mana, playing the Voidwalker and the Imp Gang boss, establishing a really good board. Let's see what Alan Dang can actually play right now. So he decides to trade the Frenzy Monkey in. I really like this. Playing Sylvanas Windrunner, it sort of put Bakher and Nave in a really awkward kind of position. He definitely needs to do awkward trades in order to remove the Sylvanas, or at least do something awkward, waste a little bit of resources and stuff like that. But deciding to play the Velcor. So we do have a little chat block here, but Velcor is definitely being played. Velcor is really good against Sylvanas since it doesn't die immediately. The Sylvanas doesn't die immediately, so it doesn't guarantee like a steal. But looking at Alan Dang's hand, this is really good. He can potentially just execute the Imp Gang boss and then play the Ravaging Ghoul, putting Sylvanas down at 4 health and then trading in one of the taunts in order to guarantee a 4/5 taunt on his side of the board, which creates a huge tempo play and a board clear as well. And it allows him to develop a Ravaging Ghoul, a 3/3 body, which is really good for tempo. So Alan Dang looking like he's in a really good spot here, and Bakher and Nave, he really needs to pick up something good like an AoE board clear or something for him to bring back the game, or at least survive long enough so that he can play the Cthulhu and can have a potential board clear. So Sylvanas is being played. This is definitely really good, and he can potentially also use that Shadow Ball for tempo the next turn. But playing the Sylvanas, it will force Alan Dang to do efficient trades, but since he has so much damage already, including the Arcanite Reaper, he can potentially just go face. Because why? Because he has the Grom in his hand. As long as Alan Dang can get an activator, and as long as there's no taunts on board, he can easily put out lethal. But unfortunately, Voidwalker is being picked up and is going to be taunted with the Sylvanas and also using Shadow Ball to clear the board. So definitely, Alan Dang is not going to have lethal anytime soon. But let's see what he picks up so that if he has lethal or not. So the Grom is definitely going to be played so that he can remove the 2-4 taunt, but definitely he's going to use Arcanite Reaper first on the Sylvanas. It's because he doesn't want his Grom to get stolen. But using the Grom on the 2-4 taunt is really good here. The reason for that is because it forces Bacarine to remove this Grom, or I'm going to have lethal the following turn. It's not that hard for the warrior to produce 1 point of damage since they have weapons, and they have Korkan Elise now as well. So Bacarine, he doesn't have a choice. He needs to play Cthulhu and can potentially either remove it with the Cthulhu alone or with the Argus on board. And unfortunately, not even enough. So Alan Dang will be taking the first match against Bacarine with the Grom and the Axe. So, or he can do it with the Korkan lead. He has a lot of options. So Alan Dang taking the first game in this series. In this second match, we will be seeing Alan Dang playing the Control Paladin and Bacarine playing the Dragon Priest. Personally, I feel the Control Paladin actually has the upper hand just because of the efficient board clear, the Ecology Consecrated combo, and also having the True Silver Champion to deal with a lot of the Dragon Priest's high health kind of minions, which is really good for the Control Paladin, and eventually they will stabilize and eventually beat them down with the late game creatures. That's why I feel the Control Paladin has the upper hand here. Both players has really good hands here. Alan Dang picking up the Loot Hoarder, which can be played on turn 2 to test something on board, and also picking up the True Silver Champion to be able to deal with a lot of high health minions that the Dragon Priest kind of has. So Bacarine playing a 2-drop, the Wormist Agent, planning to follow up with another Wormist Agent the following turn as long as Alan Dang doesn't play a creature. Because if Alan Dang tends to play a creature like the Loot Hoarder right here, Bacarine would need to force to be using the Wormist Agent to trade into it and healing it back up to full health just so it prevents it from being vulnerable to Consecrate. But it really forces him not to play the second 2-drop here, so really good for Alan Dang, not forcing the Dragon Priest not being able to play the second 2-drop. Alan Dang playing the Acolyte of Pain here. The reason for that is because on the board state right now, we do see it does guarantee 2 draws, but unfortunately, Bacarine is going to play the Shadow Word Pain here, denying Alan Dang the draws and denying him the Equality Constant combos and the reactive cards that Alan Dang might actually have. But having that True Silver Champion easily removing the Wormist Agent is really bad for Bacarine because he is losing in terms of board, and Bacarine knows that he will not beat the Control Paladin in the late game, so he definitely needs to put up the pressure at the moment. On his turn 4 play is sort of weak because he can only just play the Wormist Agent. He didn't pick up the Twilight Guardian, which is unfortunate, but on turn 5 he has a pretty strong play. He can either play the Corruptor or Zerdrake, depending on what Alan Dang plays. If Alan Dang decides to develop a creature, maybe not the Twilight Summoner, but Loot Hoarder, he can easily just play the Corruptor and just remove it for heavy tempo. Alan Dang can easily remove the Wormist Agent here just by using the weapon. He can easily just develop the Twilight Summoner or the Loot Hoarder and just hero power. Either or is pretty good. I would personally like the Twilight Summoner because it does put a little pressure on the Priest's side of the board, but it is vulnerable to Cabal Shadow Priest. But fortunately for Alan Dang, it is not turn 6, so it doesn't really matter too much. So this is a really awkward situation for Bacarine, just because if he Corruptors it, he gets a 5/5, so he has to potentially Corruptor to the face. I personally like the Zerdrake here. You don't want to remove this Twilight Summoner because you don't want giving Alan Dang some value, so drawing a card yourself is pretty good. Pick up Northshire is not bad at all. It does it does allow you to draw a couple cards, like potentially draw a couple cards. So looking at Alan Dang's hand here, he does pick up the Doomsayer, which is not too relevant right now. He can definitely just play it slow and just develop something on the board, just playing the Loot Hoarder, just hero powering, and then just hit face with the Twilight Summoner. He can definitely play it slow. He had the Equality Consecrate. If Bacarine decides to develop the board heavily, he can easily just Equality Consecrate because he does have it in hand. He even has the Eldor to back it up just in case some big threat comes out. And we do see Bacarine having the Nixia. That actually makes a difference against this matchup, because if Alan Dang uses both Equality Consecrate, Nixia can definitely refill it, so it definitely is a really good card to have against this matchup. So having the Zerdrake trade into the Loot Hoarder, healing it back up. I feel like it's a Loot Hoarder, right? Yeah, the Loot Hoarder, healing it back up just so he gets a card draw and pick up the Shadow Word Death, which is a pretty good top deck in my opinion. But even losing that 5-5, Alan Deng is still in a pretty good position here, just because we do see a lot of board clears from his hand. We have the Doomsayer, you have Pyro Equality, we have 2 Consecrates. Personally, in this board, I like using the Pyromancer with the Consecrate here. It does entirely remove the board, although you do lose that 1-1, which is not too big of a deal, but it does slow down the game. And Bucarene can't really afford to lose his board because he is reaching the late game, which is where Control Paladin is strong at. And so it means that he does need to actually put up the pressure. Or Alan Deng has another option here. He can put the Twilight Summer and the Doomsayer is at the same time. It does slow down the game. And Bucarene can't really afford to actually lose this board, so he will force to be traded into the Doomsayer, but he definitely does use the Pyromancer with the Consecrate kind of combo to remove the entire board, surely. The Corruptor will definitely go down here to remove the Pyromancer just so you can save the Shadow Word Death for something else, and you also need to develop something on board. You can use the Power Word Shield here, but he decides to heal the face. I personally would like the Power Word Shield here because it does protect the Corruptor from a true Silver Champion, and you can't really afford to lose a minion on board just because you need to put up the pressure, because the Control Paladin is so at such a high health. He has 28 health, and you haven't put in enough pressure to actually beat down the Control Paladin. As the game goes forward, you're going to be losing quite a bit, and you will be running out of steam. You do have the Elixir to refill the board if 2 Equality Consecrates are used, but even then, Alan Deng has a lot of late game creatures as well, such as N'Zoth, which can eventually beat you down immediately with the immense board pressure. And Elder is being put down just to relieve off the pressure that the Dragon Priest actually has. Picking up the Chill Maw is really good here just because it does contest everything on board that Alan Deng has. When playing the Chill Maw, Alan Deng will probably be forced to use the Corrupted Anti-Hippo to trade into it. Although the 3/3 dies, it doesn't really matter too much, which is really good for Bucarene because it's a full board clear while also have a 1/1 on board potentially. You don't really need to use the Power Word Shield on the Chill Maw just because if Alan Deng does plan to use the Corrupted Anti-Killbot to trade into it, everything dies anyways. If you're going to Power Word Shield a Chill Maw, Alan Deng just uses the 2 creatures to actually trade into it, which is the same result, so pretty much you're wasting a Power Word Shield. So it's not too big of a deal not using Power Word Shield here. So looking at Alan Deng's hand, I personally just like using the Corrupted Anti-Killbot to trade into the Chill Maw. You don't really want to use that many resources. You haven't seen a Ysera yet or any big threats, so you do want to keep that Equality Consecrate. I guess like after you trade in with the Anti-Killbot, you can actually just lay on hands. I personally like lay on hands because Bucarene's hand, board state is pretty weak, which allows you to use lay on hands. Like, it's a free turn to use lay on hands, and you're not at a low life total, so you're not pressured in any kind of way, so you will be able to draw those cards that you need and do active cards to actually beat down the Dragon Priest. So I personally like using lay on hands. I think he's also designed to use that too. He could develop the Doomsayer just to prevent Bucarene to develop anything on turn 9, such as like a Ysera. But I definitely like drawing here, because even if Bucarene plays the Ysera, you have a lot of reactive cards to answer the board anyways. So Bucarene does decide to play Ysera. This is a really brave kind of play, just because you haven't seen Alan Deng play an Equality yet, and he just drew cards. Maybe you're forcing Alan Deng to use the Equality Consecrate or Equality Pyro or that kind of combination, just because you do want those 2 cards, that combination of cards to be out of Alan Deng's deck or hand as soon as possible, just because you can develop the Nixia to pressure down the board and eventually beat them down with it. So Alan Deng using Equality and Power to move everything on board, which is really good for Alan Deng. So one of the threats of Dragon Priest is gone. Usually how you beat Dragon Priest is to consistently remove the threats, as long as you remove your 0 and potentially another big threat like maybe Chill Maw or any other late game creatures like Deathwing that you sometimes play. But as long as Alan Deng consistently remove its threats, you're eventually just going to win out the game, especially when you're going to consistently also develop bigger creatures in the late game too. So Blackwing Corruptor is being played here in combination with the Holy Nova, does do a full board clear. So Bucarene is hanging on there with the Corruptor with only 5 damage on board, although from Alan Deng's hand, he does have a pretty big turn coming up with the Tyrion, but fortunately enough, Bucarene does have the Entomb to answer that, and Doomsayer is going to be picked up. This is really interesting. The reason for that is because Alan Deng is going to be anticipating like Entomb, just so it forces Bacarone to either hit face and lose the 5/4 because he might not have enough mana to actually remove this Doomsayer when after using Entomb. But fortunately, we do see the Shadow Word Pain, which is not what Allendang wants to see. But at least this doesn't allow Bacarone to develop another creature on board, which can be very devastating for Allendang. Like, let's say having the Blackwing Technician and Corruptor on board, it actually put down a lot of pressure against Allendang. So Bacarone decides to use the 5/4, hit face, and just heal. I don't feel like Bacarone really needs to draw. I'm not sure how many cards they both have in their deck. Maybe Bacarone is afraid of going to Fatigue, but I feel like Power Shield is still pretty good on the Corruptor just because it does protect you from True Silver Champion, but that's just me. Or maybe True Silver Champion is used already. I don't remember, but definitely, it does protect you at least from something, like even if from efficient trades and stuff like that. So Allendang, looking at here, he does pick up the N'Zoth. He also have the Forbidden Healing. Since he picked up the Forbidden Healing, he can slow down. One card I really like Allendang to actually play right now is N'Zoth. The reason for that is because N'Zoth is such a strong card against Dragon Priest because they have so few ways to actually remove this huge board. Although it doesn't look that threatening now, but the death rattles that it actually has from the Twilight Summoner is actually quite threatening. And the Loot Hoarder also allows Allendang to gain kind of like card advantage, bring out the threats from his deck and stuff like that. And even the 5/7 itself is really threatening. And 6/6 of course is threatening as well, just because it can trade so well with Bacarone's board. So right now Bacarone is trying to figure out a way to actually try and survive. He can just play Onyxia to actually just contest the board, but playing Onyxia, the Twilight Summoners are going to trade with the Whelps and produce an even bigger board. So Bacarone actually decides to use the Corruptor and trade into the 2/1 just to relieve himself in a better position, just less damage on board, and play his own Onyxia. It looks pretty good, like on board, but Allendang has an immediate answer with the Ultimate and the Consecrate, trading it in the Twilight Summoner to remove the board entirely. And also having another 5/5 on board, so even more pressure on Bacarone. So looking really bad for Bacarone here, and looking like Allendang is a really good position to actually win this game, because I don't actually see Bacarone being able to remove anything. Like, he doesn't have any AoE removals. The one thing he can play is Sylvanas, but it can easily be ignored because Allendang has enough damage for lethal. So playing the Azure Drake, maybe planning to pick up like a Holy Nova or Excavate Evo, but even then I don't think it's enough. You won't be able to remove anything on board, and it's just going to become stronger just because the Twilight Summoner is going to summon another 5/5 when your AoE board clears. So it's looking pretty bad for Bacarone, and I think Allendang's going to take game number 2 looking at this kind of board state. And yeah, Bacarone decides to concede, and Allendang doing a really good job taking game number 2. So game number 3, Bacarone playing as Dragon Priest once again, and Allendang up 2-0 against Bacarone, and is going to play the Aggro Shaman. I personally feel the Aggro Shaman actually has the upper hand here, but then again, Bacarone has a really good curve up, like what he has right now, just because he can play a turn 2 taunt, which is really hard for Allendang to actually deal with early, considering looking at his hand, since he doesn't have any spells to actually remove it. But Finley is going to be played immediately from Allendang. If he picks up Life Tab, it would be really good for him, but unfortunately these 3 hero powers are not what he actually needs, because none of these can actually put him an advantage against the Dragon Priest. Either he gets a Hunter hero power, the Druid hero power, or even the Life Tab are all good for him because it does damage, but these ones are all like survivability type of hero power, so it's definitely not what he needs at the moment. Maybe he will take the heal just to gain board pressure, just to keep his minions high in health so he can do efficient trades and have his minions live a little bit longer on board, just so he can consistently deal damage with them. But we do see a Holy Nova being picked up, which is another good card against this matchup. We're going to see the Wormus Agent being picked up here, or put down here, and it's really looking really hard for Allendang to actually remove this creature. But luckily enough, Abusive Sergeant is being picked up. Abusive Sergeant can be used with the infiltrator in order to trade into the Hermes agent really efficiently. But we do see Bakerne being able to put down like a technician the following turn, which is really huge. But unfortunately, the Twilight Guardian is not going to have the buff on turn 4, depending if Bakerne picks up a dragon or not these past 2 turns. But the Flame Juggler hits the Hermes agent, which is really nice. It allows him to officially trade into the Hermes agent. That's a really big gamble there, just because if it didn't hit, he would be looking like in a pretty big position. But Alan Dang gaining that tempo, taking that risk, so it was really good. Picking up the Earth Shock. I'm not sure if you really want to use the Earth Shock on the technician, but Alan Dang feels like he should. The reason why is because if you're going to use the Earth Shock now, it's really hard for you to actually remove a big taunt like the Twilight Guardian, and you are going up into turn 4, which can potentially be put down, and you know there's a dragon in Bakerne's hand as well, so you'll never know. Like, you do remove this creature now, but if a huge taunt is actually put down this turn, you will get punished. But fortunately enough, Bakerne actually does not have another dragon to actually buff up this Twilight Guardian. But he needs to play it anyway to actually contest the board, because you are playing an aggressive deck. As long as you control the board early, you will be able to stabilize later on in the mid and late game to potentially beat down this deck, because this deck, this Aggro Shaman deck, does run out of steam. So all you need to do is just stay alive in the early game, and you will potentially win the game. You do have the Holy Nova to back you up, just to move every small minion Alan Dang plays, and you do have the Cabal Shadow Priest to follow up on turn 6 to grab a small creature and build up your board and slowly beat down the Aggro Shaman. And looking at Bakerne, he's in a really good position here, so it might actually look like he might even win game number 3 and actually stay on, but we'll never know, because Alan Dang does have the Doomhammer in hand and can easily be switched to his favor as long as he pick up some burn damage. But he does look like he's running out of steam right now, and Priest does has the power to heal up every turn, so it does negate like some damage from the Doomhammer. So Alan Dang healing up his Flame Juggler just so it lives longer on board, and so that he can actually trade off the board and produce some damage. So Holy Nova is being played right now to immediately remove everything on board. Doesn't look really good for Alan Dang here. He does not have enough minions on board to actually put down pressure to actually beat down the Dragon Priest. The Doomhammer is put down to produce some pressure, because he needs to start dealing damage, because he knows that he's running out of steam. He knows he doesn't have anything on board. He knows that he can't beat the Dragon Priest late game as long as he doesn't have minions, and he's really behind just because of that Holy Nova. And we do see the Hermes agent being picked up and becoming a 2/4 taunt, which does deny the 2 charges of the Doomhammer, which is not what you're looking for. But Alan Dang does need to use the Doomhammer to actually remove this taunt in order to actually win the game, because he does need to start using the Doomhammer to start going to the face, healing up just so he can last a little longer, just so it lasts him a couple more turns to actually draw into burst potential, as he does have 1 Rock Biter in hand, so it's definitely not over. Picking him another one is definitely really good for him. Lightning Bolt is also good. It can be targeted on the face or used on the minion to survive a little bit more, just so you can draw into your burst damage. But looking at Alan Dang's position, Bakerne is slowly building up his board, and looking at his hand, he can just consistently keep playing a minion each and every turn to beat you down. So even if you heal each and every turn, it isn't really going to do much. It isn't really going to buy you a lot of time. Lightning Bolt is going to be used for tempo here, just to stop the bleeding a little bit, just to have a little bit more of a survivability, as I said before, just so you can draw into those burst damage. But really not looking in a good spot here. So using the Doomhammer, just producing the amount of damage that you can actually do this turn, and just slowly try to beat down the Dragon Priest. Cabal Shadow Priest is unfortunately being played here, taking the Argent Horse Rider and just using it against Alan Dang right now. Really looking grim. Only 2 charges on the Doomhammer, and he can't even pick up the double Rock Biter. So this really forces Alan Dang to not use his 2 charges of Doomhammer to actually control the board, just because he can't really afford to. So looking at Alan Dang's position, I really can see him just healing himself and passing, and see if he picks up another Doomhammer to deal damage to the face. You will have at least like 3 to 4 turns to actually stay alive, but he decides to use the 2 Doomhammer on the face. I guess he actually is going all in terms of drawing another Doomhammer to use a double Rock Biter on. which is one of his only outs to this match. But even if he picks up a Doomhammer the following turn, he will be one off lethal, and we do see the Twilight Guardian being played right now, denying a potential Doomhammer top deck, which is really backbreaking for Alan Dang at the moment. Not really good, looking good for him right now. Ooh, this ancestral knowledge is going to draw him a couple of cards. Maybe it will help him out a little bit. Ooh, the Flamelift Faceless does contest a ton on board, as long as it isn't be removed with the other creatures on board. But it's definitely going to be answered by the Corruptor and potentially the Argent Horse Rider with the 2/6, or it can be traded with the 4/5 and the Corruptor. But you can potentially also ignore it too, just because you do have the taunt on board. But I feel like you should value the taunt just in case Alan Dang has double Rockbiter and a potential Doomhammer, which can burst you down from a very high health total. Just because he can also complement it with another burst spell, which can actually burst you down from 21. So I definitely like removing the 7/7 here while also keeping the taunt. So yeah, he's definitely trading 2/6 with the Argent Horse Rider. I personally like trading the 2/6 and the Argent Horse Rider, but definitely it doesn't really matter. As long as you move the 7/7 on board, you're in a really good spot. So yeah, the taunt is doing a lot of work. It's preventing a lot of possibilities for lethal from Alan Dang. So let's see what Alan Dang picks up. A Lava Burst, which is not what he needs right now, and I can't really see him actually finding a way to actually win this game if he decides to use his Rockbiter right here. He definitely is playing it to his out, since he is saving one of the Rockbiters so that he can potentially draw into Doomhammer. But he uses the Lava Burst on his face. Very honorable of him. So Valkyrie is definitely going to take this game with his powerful Dragon Priest curves that they usually have. We will be going to game number 4, where Alan Dang will play his last deck, which is the Aggro Shaman, and Valkyrie playing once again his Cthulhu Warlock deck. So previously, we talked a little bit about this Cthulhu kind of Warlock deck. It's sort of like a mid-range deck with like a Zoo kind of early game build, which is really interesting, and I'm really interested to see how it fares against like the Aggro Shaman. But I personally feel the Aggro Shaman has the upper hand, because if Valkyrie consistently life tap, it really helps out the Shaman, just because when you life tap, you're pretty much helping out the Shaman for dealing damage, right? Because you take 2 almost each and every turn. But looking at Valkyrie's hand, the Flame Hit will be in play. This also helps the Shaman because it deals 3 damage to your face, right? But looking at Valkyrie's curve is actually quite good. He's able to coin in the Imp Gang Boss next turn and also follow it up with another Imp Gang Boss, which is a pretty good board. Alan Dang decided to use the 2/1 to trade into the 3/2. Imp Gang Boss is being played right now. It's really good. Turn 3 play. It does contest into the 1/1 quite well, also the Fear of Spirits as well. But in Alan Dang's point of view, he really just needs to go face. Then he also has the Argent Horse Rider and the Rockbiter to actually contest this Imp Gang Boss if he wants to, but he definitely can't play that the following turn just because he's overloaded. He can probably just draw with the Ancestral Knowledge just to draw more into his burst damage. But looking at Valkyrie, just playing that 1 drop. I personally would play the Voidwalker over the Northshire Footman, but that's just me, because, you know, Voidwalker is a little bit better. So only having 2 mana, pick him to Totem Golem. I'll definitely play that card over the Ancestral Knowledge, but never know. Alan Dang might actually consider just drawing here, but I personally like developing the board because you are a little bit behind. You do see the Imp Gang Boss like enable to generate like a 1/1 each time it's damage, and Valkyrie can potentially follow it with another big creature on turn 4, like a Cthulhu's Chosen, or even another Imp Gang Boss, like looking at his hand right now. And Alan Dang saw a Shadow Bolt before, so you can potentially use that for kind of a tempo play, so you'd be put even more behind if you don't play anything now and just decide to draw. So right now, they're even in terms of board, but I feel like Valkyrie will be playing the Shadow Bolt onto the 3/4. It's just too good, and then you can use the 2/2 to trade into the Pharaoh Spirit and generate another 1/1 and follow with a Goldshire Footman. So you're having a lot of tempo right now, and even if Alan Dang decides to play like the Doomhammer, you will negate 1 durability with the Goldshire Footman. But although he can't play it now, but he can play in this like next turn if he wants to. But he decides he's going to be overloaded once again with the Fear of Spirit, and he's going to play the Infiltrator just to build more of a board. Infiltrator is really good here just because it doesn't get traded immediately, so he can use it for efficient trading if he wants to, or to the face. but Alan Dang looks like he's running out of steam, but fortunately enough, he does have the Ancestral Knowledge to fill his hand. But Karenade picked up the Argus, which is also another good card to pick up. Maybe he won't be playing it here. Maybe he will play a more stickier type of minion, because even if he plays the Argus here, he can't really trade anything. But playing the Cthulhu's Disciple is actually quite good. It allows you to trade really efficiently with the 1/1s, but it doesn't allow you to trade with the Pharaoh, but it doesn't really matter too much. You can follow with the Argus the following turn or developing a bigger board. I actually personally like the Imp Gang boss there, and you can follow with the Disciple of Cthulhu the following turn after the Imp Gang boss is played, just so you have a stickier board and you can trade more efficiently. Because now you're in a really awkward position, but fortunately enough, he picked up another Disciple of Cthulhu to trade off the Pharaoh Spirit with it, and then using the 1/1 to trade onto another creature. So if he didn't pick up a Disciple of Cthulhu there, it will definitely be really awkward, and Alan Dang would actually be able to produce a lot of damage with the creatures on board. But we see a two-member being picked up with the Trog, so the Trog will be buffed up at the moment. I want to see if he trades off the Disciple of Cthulhu, and he does, so which is really good. It does protect your Tunnel Trog on board, so it will live long enough to deal damage if he doesn't actually have an answer for it. But I personally like playing the Argus here with the Imp Gang boss to trade off his Trog, because it will be out of control if you don't handle it right now, and it does block a lot of the Doomhammer kind of charges at the moment. So it's really, really good, and we don't see Alan Dang actually having an answer for it right now, but we do see the Ancestral Knowledge being picked up here, being played here, and he does pick up a Lightning Bolt, and he does have enough removal to remove these taunts. I personally feel like you can just use the Doom Hammer to just remove the Imp Gang boss and the Divine Shield from the Argent Squire, and you can follow with the Lightning Bolt the following turn, and then use the Rock Biter to actually deal a lot of damage with the Lava Burst the following turn. So definitely, Alan Dang can just remove the taunts right now, and then follow it with the Rock Biter and Lava Burst the following turn to do tons of damage. So that's definitely what he does right now. And he's setting up for a pretty strong turn the following turn, and it's potentially lethal, I feel. So he has 15 damage in hand with another 3 on board, 3. So he has 20 points of damage in total if Buchanan can't deal with this board. I mean, we do see the Black Knight being played onto a 0 taunt. Talk about value, am I right? So I feel Buchanan is going to remove everything on board. If he doesn't remove everything on board, he's pretty much dead. So and Alan Dang is 1-off lethal at the moment, so you can definitely pick up lethal right now. So Lightning Bolt is picked up, so that's just enough for him to actually deal enough damage to Buchanan for lethal. So it was a mistake, so I'm not sure what a mistake. Maybe he didn't really need to hero power. Oh yeah, he didn't need to hero power, because oh my god, that was a mistake, because when he hero power, he missed lethal. My god, Alan Dang missing lethal because he miscalculated his mana cost. So Buchanan might actually come back from here if he runs Reno Jackson, but he can't really tap for it. But he probably would be pretty punished if Buchanan actually runs Reno Jackson in this deck. But fortunately, he doesn't, so he will not be punished. So there is never justice in this game. So we do see Alan Dang actually picking up this game. Buchanan can't be able to life tab in order to find another answer to stay alive, even if he does play some type of heal. But Buchanan gonna use his last efforts to make a play on his final turn, knowing that it's inevitable that he's going to lose right now, because he's staring down at a Doomhammer, and that last card probably in his hand is not going to be damage, I feel, because if it was damage, he would have had lethal because it's only 1-off, right? But Honorable Sudoku from Buchanan, and Alan Dang taking the whole series in the quarterfinals at the moment.